Have you ever walked away from a conversation carrying the heavy burden of everything you did not say? You step out of the room, you close the door, and suddenly, the perfect words arrive. They flood your mind with absolute clarity. You know exactly how you should have expressed your feelings, how you should have defended your boundaries, or how you should have articulated that brilliant idea. But the moment has passed, the room is empty, and you are left alone with the echo of your own silence. Millions of people carry this invisible weight every single day. They sit in meetings, at dinner tables, and in relationships, feeling like ghosts in their own lives. They speak, but they are not heard. They try to express their deepest truths, but the words come out tangled, defensive, or hollow. And when this happens repeatedly, a quiet tragedy unfolds. You begin to shrink. You begin to believe that your voice does not matter. You convince yourself that you are simply not articulate enough, not charismatic enough, or not intelligent enough to hold the attention of others. Welcome to Clean Slate Audiobook. Today, we are going to untangle the knots in your throat. We are not going to teach you how to manipulate, how to dominate a room, or how to speak the loudest. The world is already full of noise. Instead, we are going to explore the profound psychology of speaking with grace and clarity. We are going to learn the art of being truly heard. To understand why your mind goes blank when you need it the most, we must first extend profound compassion to your own nervous system. When you are sitting in a high-stakes conversation, whether it is a negotiation with your boss or a deeply emotional discussion with your partner, your body does not perceive it as just a conversation. If you have a history of feeling unheard or invalidated, your brain perceives this interaction as a threat to your psychological survival. When you feel the pressure to perform, to be perfect, or to avoid being misunderstood, your amygdala, the primitive alarm bell in your brain, is triggered. It floods your bloodstream with stress hormones. It prepares you to fight, flee, or freeze. And in the modern world of communication, freezing looks exactly like your mind going completely blank. The blood flow literally moves away from your prefrontal cortex, the center of logic and language, and rushes to your extremities. You are not forgetting your words because you are unintelligent. You are losing your words because your biological hardware is desperately trying to protect you from perceived danger. This is the first and most vital shift in your paradigm. You must stop punishing yourself for being nervous. The frustration you feel toward your own silence only adds fuel to the fire. When you walk away from a conversation and furiously scold yourself for not speaking up, you are reinforcing the trauma. You are telling your nervous system that speaking is, indeed, a dangerous and painful endeavor. The foundation of articulate, graceful communication does not begin with the words you speak to others. It begins entirely with the words you speak to yourself. It begins with silencing the inner critic. Inside your mind, there is a narrator. For many of us, this narrator is ruthless. It is a harsh, relentless voice that edits every thought before it even reaches your tongue. Before you open your mouth to share an idea, the inner critic whispers, "That is a stupid idea. They will laugh at you. Someone else has already thought of that. Just stay quiet and be safe." This inner critic was not born with you. It was constructed over a lifetime. It is an amalgamation of every time you were interrupted as a child, every time a teacher dismissed your question, every time a partner rolled their eyes at your feelings. The inner critic internalized those rejections and created a defense mechanism. If I criticize myself first, and if I stay perfectly silent, the world cannot hurt me. But this safety is an illusion. It is a prison disguised as a sanctuary. You cannot communicate with clarity to the outside world if there is a violent, chaotic war happening inside your own mind. Imagine trying to sing a beautiful, delicate melody while a heavy metal band is screaming directly into your ear. That is what it is like trying to express your true feelings while your inner critic is actively tearing you down. The tension in your throat, the shallowness of your breath, the rapid pacing of your speech. These are all physical manifestations of the internal conflict. You are rushing to get the words out before your own mind shuts you down. To speak with grace, you must first cultivate a profound internal silence. You must learn to witness your thoughts without immediately judging them. This requires a practice of radical self-acceptance. The next time you feel the urge to speak, and you feel that familiar tightening in your chest, pause. Do not fight the anxiety. Acknowledge it. Tell yourself, I am feeling nervous right now, and that is completely okay. My thoughts are valid, even if they are imperfect. Graceful communication is rooted in the understanding that you do not need to be flawless to be worthy of being heard. The most compelling speakers in the world are not the ones who never make grammatical errors or who never stutter. The most compelling speakers are the ones who are profoundly comfortable in their own skin. They speak from a place of grounded authenticity. They are not trying to perform for the room. They are simply offering their truth to the room. When you remove the impossible expectation of perfection, something miraculous happens to your physiology. Your shoulders drop. Your breathing slows down and moves deeper into your diaphragm. The alarm bells in your amygdala begin to quiet. The blood flow returns to your prefrontal cortex, and suddenly, the mental fog lifts. The words that were locked away behind a wall of fear are released. They flow naturally, steadily, and clearly. You must realize that your voice is an instrument, but your mind is the musician. You cannot tune the instrument until you have calmed the musician. The art of being heard is, fundamentally, the art of believing that you have a right to exist, a right to take up space, and a right to share your perspective, simply because you are here. This is the beginning of our journey. We have identified the invisible chains of the inner critic and the biological reality of the freeze response. We have established that true eloquence is born from internal peace, not external performance. But once you have calmed the internal storm, how do you actually construct the bridge? How do you take the pure, raw emotions and ideas within you and translate them into words that resonate deeply with another human being? How do you speak your truth without causing unnecessary harm? And how do you navigate the difficult, emotionally charged conversations that define our lives? Once the internal storm is quieted and the inner critic is silenced, a new challenge emerges. How do you construct the physical act of speaking? How do you project that hard-won internal peace into a room full of noise, distraction, and judgment? Society has sold us a highly destructive myth about what it means to be articulate. We are conditioned to believe that the smartest person in the room is the one who speaks the fastest. We watch debaters and charismatic politicians fire off rapid responses, never stumbling, never pausing, delivering a relentless barrage of words. We equate speed with intelligence. We equate a quick comeback with dominance. But for the vast majority of people, rapid speech is not a sign of supreme confidence. It is a biological trauma response. It is a manifestation of the fawning or flight mechanism. Think about your own behavior when you feel intimidated. When you finally muster the courage to speak up in a meeting, or when you are trying to explain your feelings to a partner who is physically turning away from you, what happens to your cadence? You speed up. You rush through your sentences. You compress your thoughts into the smallest possible window of time. Why do we do this? Because subconsciously, we operate from a mindset of absolute scarcity. We believe that we are borrowing the listener's attention and that their attention is a fragile, finite resource that is about to expire at any millisecond. We rush because we are terrified of being interrupted. We rush because we fear that if we take a breath, the other person will jump in and steal the floor. We are essentially apologizing for taking up space in the atmosphere. Graceful communication demands that you completely abandon this scarcity mindset. To speak with absolute clarity, you must do the one thing your nervous system is begging you not to do. You must slow down. Slowing down your physical cadence is the ultimate act of claiming your space in the world. When you deliberately reduce the speed of your words, you send a powerful, bidirectional signal. Inwardly, you signal to your own amygdala that you are safe, that there is no predator chasing you, and that you have all the time in the world. Outwardly, you signal to the room that your words possess gravity. People do not listen to those who rush. They listen to those who are comfortable enough to take their time. But slowing down introduces a new terror, silence. Most human beings are profoundly uncomfortable with silence in a conversation. We treat silence as a void, a terrifying vacuum that exposes our incompetence. When our brain is searching for the next word and a fraction of a second of silence appears, we panic. We instinctively fill that void with filler words, like, you know, right. These filler words are verbal crutches. They are the sound of a mind scrambling to maintain control of the microphone. The true artist of communication understands that silence is not an empty void. Silence is a canvas. It is a structural tool. Consider the concept of the pregnant pause. When you deliver a vital piece of information, or when you express a deep, vulnerable truth, and then you deliberately close your mouth and hold the silence for 2 full seconds, magic happens. The pause acts as a psychological highlighter. It frames the sentence that preceded it. It gives the listener's brain the necessary cognitive processing time to absorb the weight of your words. If you deliver a profound thought and immediately rush into your next sentence, you overwrite your own message. You erase the impact. By mastering the pause, you stop talking at people, and you start resonating with them. This brings us to the architecture of clarity. Many people struggle to be heard not because their ideas are bad, but because they transfer their internal chaos directly onto the listener. When you are overwhelmed with emotion, or when you have a complex idea floating in your mind, the natural instinct is to simply open your mouth and dump the raw, unfiltered stream of consciousness into the room. You loop back on your points, you go on tangents, you over-explain because you are desperately searching for validation in the listener's eyes. This emotional dumping maxes out the cognitive load of your audience. Human attention is incredibly limited. When you present someone with a tangled web of words, their brain quickly becomes exhausted. They stop listening to understand, and they either shut down completely or they start formulating their own defensive reply. To communicate with grace, you must take responsibility for the cognitive burden you are placing on your listener. You must become the editor of your own thoughts. Before you speak on a complex or emotional issue, take one single deep breath. Use that micro moment to anchor your message. Give the listener a map. Instead of launching into a 20-minute monologue about why you are frustrated with a project, you pause and say, "There are 2 specific concerns I have about this direction. First is the timeline, and second is the resource allocation. Let me explain the timeline." Do you feel the difference in that approach? You have instantly created a safe container for the conversation. The listener's brain relaxes because it knows exactly where you are going. You are no longer a chaotic storm of emotion. You are a grounded guide. This structured approach is not about sounding robotic or rehearsed. It is about supreme empathy. When you organize your thoughts, when you eliminate the frantic filler words, and when you utilize the dignified power of the pause, you are giving a gift to the person across from you. You are making it effortless for them to understand you. You are shifting the dynamic from a battle for attention to a shared exploration of truth. But what happens when the environment is hostile? What happens when you use these techniques of calm, structured pacing, and the other person still interrupts you? What happens when a conversation is not a peaceful exchange of ideas, but a high-conflict emotional collision? How do you maintain your grace and hold your boundaries when someone is actively trying to pull you back into the chaos? That is where the true test of internal strength begins. The true measure of your communication is not how eloquently you speak in a calm, supportive environment. The true test is what happens to your voice when the environment becomes hostile. What happens when you are utilizing the structural pause, organizing your thoughts, and the person across from you aggressively interrupts? What happens when a conversation transforms from a cooperative exchange of ideas into a high-stakes emotional collision? For the gentle, thoughtful communicator, this is the exact moment the system usually crashes. To hold your ground with grace, you must first understand the psychology of the interruption. When someone cuts you off mid-sentence, your immediate internal reaction is a spike of adrenaline. Your inner critic screams that you have lost control, that they do not respect you, and that you are being dominated. But if we analyze the interrupter through the lens of psychology, a different picture emerges. People rarely interrupt because they are purely malicious. They interrupt because they are hijacked by their own anxiety. They are not actually listening to you. They are simply waiting for their turn to speak, reloading their verbal ammunition. When they feel their point is slipping away, or when your words trigger an uncomfortable emotion in them, they forcefully seize the microphone to regain their own internal equilibrium. Knowing this changes everything. Their interruption is not a reflection of your inadequacy. It is a reflection of their lack of emotional regulation. But how do you respond? The primitive, biological instinct is to engage in complementary behavior. In psychology, complementary behavior means we naturally mirror the kinetic energy of the person we are interacting with. If they raise their voice, you raise your voice. If they lean in aggressively, you lean in aggressively. If they speed up, you speed up to talk over them. This is the ultimate trap. The moment you abandon your calm pacing to match their chaotic energy, you have lost. You have stepped into their frame. You are now playing a game of dominance that the louder, more aggressive person will always win. To maintain your grace and your authority, you must deploy the most powerful tool in conflict resolution: non-complementary behavior. You must do the exact opposite of what the biological mirroring instinct demands. When someone interrupts you, do not try to talk over them. Do not raise your volume. Stop speaking immediately. This is counterintuitive, but it is devastatingly effective. Let them take the floor. But as they speak, do not look away. Do not break eye contact. Look at them with a calm, neutral, almost clinical observation. You are not glaring in anger. You are simply watching a storm happen in front of you without getting wet. When they finish their interruption, they will naturally expect you to immediately counterattack. They are braced for impact. This is where you utilize the silent hold. Let one full, agonizing second of silence pass. Let their words hang in the air. This deliberate pause absorbs the kinetic energy they just threw at you. It deprives their fire of oxygen. And then, without raising your pitch, without a trace of sarcasm, you drop your volume slightly and say, "As I was saying before I was interrupted," and you seamlessly continue your original thought. This technique requires a spine of steel, but it is profoundly elegant. You do not need to shout to establish a boundary. By lowering your volume and slowing your cadence in the face of aggression, you force their nervous system to recalibrate. You become the emotional anchor in the room. They suddenly realize that their chaotic energy cannot move you. But what if the conflict is not just an interruption? What if the other person is deeply emotional, angry, or hurling accusations? Again, the instinct is to defend yourself immediately, to present facts, logic, and evidence to prove them wrong. This is a critical error. When a human being is in a state of high emotional arousal, their prefrontal cortex is offline. You cannot use logic to talk someone out of an emotion. Logic sounds like an attack to an angry brain. To diffuse the hostility, you must use the art of tactical validation. Validation does not mean you agree with their perspective. It simply means you acknowledge their emotional reality. It is the psychological equivalent of opening a pressure valve. Instead of saying, "You are wrong, and here is why," you say, "I can see that you are incredibly frustrated by this situation." Notice the phrasing. You are not saying, "You are right to be frustrated." You are simply observing and labeling the emotion. This sounds deceptively simple, but its neurological impact is profound. When an angry person feels that they have been accurately seen and heard, their amygdala physically begins to deactivate. They do not have to scream anymore because the message has been delivered. Only when the emotional temperature of the room has dropped can you introduce your own perspective. And when you do, you must guard your language against words that trigger defensiveness. Remove the word "but" from your vocabulary during a conflict. I hear that you are angry, but you need to understand my side. The word "but" acts as an eraser. It deletes the validation that came before it. Replace it with "and." I hear that you are angry, and I want to share how I am experiencing this. The word "and" allows two conflicting realities to exist in the same room without one destroying the other. It is the language of diplomacy. It is the language of a mind that is secure enough to hold space for disagreement. Navigating conflict with grace is the ultimate demonstration of internal power. It proves that your self-worth is not dependent on the immediate approval of the person across from you. You can listen without crumbling. You can be interrupted without losing your center. You can set a boundary with the calm, immovable weight of a mountain. But communication is not only about surviving the storms. It is also about building the architecture of deep, meaningful connections. How do you move beyond mere conflict resolution and enter the realm of true charisma? How do you make people feel profoundly valued in your presence, creating a magnetic pull that requires almost no words at all? We have navigated the turbulent waters of conflict. We have learned how to hold our boundaries and neutralize aggression with the quiet power of non-complementary behavior. But the mastery of communication extends far beyond mere survival in a hostile room. The ultimate goal is to build a profound, magnetic connection with other human beings. This brings us to the elusive concept of charisma. Society has taught us a fundamentally flawed definition of charisma. We are conditioned to believe that the most charismatic person in the room is the one who commands the center of attention. We picture the extrovert, the brilliant storyteller, the person who always has the perfect joke and the sharpest wit. We believe that to be magnetic, we must constantly project our personality outward, dazzling the audience with our intellect. But true, enduring charisma is not about being the most interesting person in the room. It is about being the most interested person in the room. To understand the mechanics of invisible charisma, we must look at the neuroscience of human interaction. When a human being speaks about themselves, their brain lights up in the exact same regions that respond to primary rewards like food and money. The act of sharing our own experiences, our own thoughts, and our own struggles releases a massive surge of dopamine into our system. We are biologically addicted to feeling seen and understood. The average conversation between two people is rarely a mutual exchange of ideas. It is usually two people taking turns delivering monologues. It is a waiting game. You are not actually listening to the other person. You are simply waiting for them to pause so you can insert your own story, your own opinion, or your own advice. This is where the charismatic individual fundamentally separates themselves from the crowd. They do not play the waiting game. They give the other person the rarest and most valuable commodity in the modern world: undivided, deep attention. In a world plagued by chronic distraction, where every conversation is fractured by the glow of a smartphone and the vibration of a notification, your focused presence is an act of radical generosity. When you look someone in the eye and listen to them without formulating your next response, you create a psychological sanctuary. You allow their nervous system to completely relax. You become the facilitator of their dopamine release, and subconsciously, they attach that profound feeling of well-being and validation directly to you. They will walk away from the interaction thinking you are a brilliant conversationalist, even if you barely spoke a dozen words. But there are different levels of listening, and most people never progress past the first tier. Level 1 listening is internal. It is narcissistic listening. You hear the words the other person is saying, but you immediately run them through the filter of your own experience. If they say they are exhausted from a long trip, You immediately interrupt to say, "Me too, my flight was terrible last week." You hijack their narrative to return the spotlight to yourself. This destroys the connection. It tells the other person that their experience is only valuable if it relates to you. Level 2, listening, is focused listening. You are genuinely paying attention to their words. You are not interrupting. You are nodding. This is good, but it is incomplete. It relies solely on the surface meaning of the vocabulary being used. The master communicator operates at level 3, global listening. Global listening is visceral. It is the ability to listen with your entire body. You are not just hearing the words, you are listening to the music beneath the words. You are observing the micro-expressions on their face. You are noticing the sudden drop in the pitch of their voice when they mention a specific name. You are watching the tension in their jaw. You are listening to what is not being said. When you practice global listening, you begin to ask questions that unlock the other person's hidden depths. Instead of asking surface-level, chronological questions like, "What happened next?" you ask emotional, meaning-driven questions. You ask, "How did that make you feel when they said that?" Or, "What was the hardest part of that experience for you?" These questions act as keys. They invite the speaker to step out of the superficial script they usually perform for the world and step into their authentic truth. When you hold the space for someone to do that safely, without judgment, and without immediately offering unsolicited advice, you bind them to you with a quiet, unbreakable loyalty. We must address the intense urge to offer advice. When someone we care about shares a painful story or a difficult problem, our instinct is to immediately fix it. We want to be the hero. We want to demonstrate our competence by offering a logical solution. But logic is the enemy of emotional connection in the initial stages of a conversation. When someone is in pain, they are not looking for a mechanic to fix their engine. They are looking for a mirror to validate their existence. When you rush to offer a solution, you are subtly invalidating their emotional experience. You are telling them that their feelings are a problem to be solved as quickly as possible. The charismatic communicator resists the urge to fix. They sit in the discomfort of the other person's pain. They offer the profound gift of a witness. They say, "That sounds incredibly difficult. I cannot imagine how heavy that must feel." This level of empathy requires a massive amount of internal security. It requires you to set aside your own ego, your own need to be smart, and your own need to control the outcome. This is the gravitational pull of true grace. It is not loud. It does not demand attention. It operates invisibly, pulling people toward you because you are one of the few places in their chaotic lives where they do not have to fight to be heard. You become a psychological safe harbor. But how do we maintain this state? How do we integrate the silencing of the inner critic, the mastery of the pause, the neutralization of conflict, and the profound depth of global listening into an enduring way of life? How do we permanently rewrite our communication operating system so that grace becomes our default reality rather than a temporary performance? We have deconstructed the architecture of silence. We have exposed the inner critic, mastered the profound weight of the pause, neutralized hostility with non-complementary behavior, and discovered the magnetic pull of global listening. You now possess the tools to navigate the most complex human interactions with absolute grace. But tools alone are not enough. If you treat these concepts merely as techniques to be deployed in a meeting or an argument, they will eventually fail you. You will inevitably revert to your biological baseline under extreme pressure. To permanently transform your reality, you must move beyond technique and enter the realm of integration. You must upgrade the core operating system of your identity. The greatest obstacle to this permanent integration is not the future, it is the past. Many of us carry the heavy, invisible ghosts of every conversation we mishandled. We replay the phantom arguments in our minds, years after the other person has forgotten them. We carry the bitter resentment of the times we allowed our boundaries to be crushed because we were too afraid to speak. We look back at decades of our lives and feel a profound sense of grief for the voice we never used. If you want to step into the quiet, immovable power of your authentic voice, you must first forgive the version of yourself that remained silent. Understand this with absolute clarity. Your past silence was not a character flaw. It was a biological survival strategy. Your nervous system calculated that the environment you were in, whether it was a chaotic childhood home, a toxic relationship, or a punishing workplace, was not safe for your truth. Your brain chose silence to protect you from rejection, abandonment, or conflict that you were not equipped to handle at the time. You must look back at that younger, frightened version of yourself and offer them profound gratitude. Their silence kept you alive. Their hypervigilance got you to this exact moment. But you must also consciously realize that the war is over. The threats of the past are no longer in the room with you. You are an adult now, equipped with an entirely different psychological arsenal. You no longer need the armor of silence, because you are now strong enough to withstand the friction of being seen. When you release the shame of your past communication failures, you free up massive amounts of cognitive energy. You stop fighting ghosts and start inhabiting the present moment. To make this grace permanent, you must practice it when the stakes are incredibly low. You do not build a new nervous system baseline in the middle of a screaming match. You build it in the quiet, mundane moments of your daily life. Practice the pregnant pause with the cashier at the grocery store. Practice global listening with an acquaintance whose story you would normally tune out. Practice observing your inner critic when you are alone in your car, stuck in traffic. When you feel the familiar tightening in your chest, the urge to rush your words, or the desperate need to prove your intelligence, simply notice it. Breathe into the diaphragm, lower your shoulders, and consciously choose to slow down. Every time you make this microscopic choice, you are firing a new neural pathway. Through repetition, this pathway becomes a superhighway. What begins as a conscious, difficult effort eventually becomes an unconscious, effortless baseline. You do not just act calm. You physically become a calm organism. The ripple effect of this transformation is staggering. As your internal chaos subsides, the environment around you will begin to mirror your new frequency. When you stop approaching conversations as battles to be won, people will lay down their weapons in your presence. When you stop rushing to fill the silence, you will give others the permission to explore their own depths. You will begin to attract individuals who value resonance over noise, truth over performance, and deep connection over superficial dominance. You will no longer be a victim of the room's energy. You will become the thermostat that controls it. The art of being heard is not about speaking the loudest. It is about speaking from a place of such profound internal security that shouting becomes entirely unnecessary. Your voice is the bridge between your internal universe and the external world. For too long, you have allowed fear, trauma, and the noise of society to dictate the traffic on that bridge. It is time to reclaim it. The world does not need more rapid-fire opinions. It does not need more panicked individuals fighting for a fleeting moment of attention. The world is desperate for the grounded, immovable presence of someone who knows exactly who they are. Take a deep breath. Lower your shoulders. Silence the critic. And speak your truth with the quiet, devastating power of grace. This has been Clean Slate Audiobook. The noise has faded. The slate is clean. Now, let them hear you.